1 of the Gauntlet podcast. My name is Jason.
My name's Epi.
And my name's Dan.
Hey, Epi, thanks for being on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Listeners, Epi is Epidiah Ravachol, game designer, known for a number of games, really good games. Dread and Swords Without Master are probably his two biggest ones. He's also the publisher of the Worlds Without Master magazine game story anthology thing. Yeah. We're going to talk about that a little bit later in the show and some other things. But in the meantime, we have a couple more segments, and the first one is games we have been playing recently. Epi, I gather you have been playing Meg Baker's wishing games. You want to tell us about those?
Yeah. Well, she's got a Patreon at patreon.com/Megay. And she's making these little... I think she's about done with the cycle now, which is good. She started last year in December. She made a game for the Epimus promotion, which I think we'll probably talk about a little bit later as well. And called... I forget what that one was called. The Heart. Something... The Stag in the Heart.
Along those lines? Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I think that's right. If it's wrong, we'll have Rich just put in a robot voice that says
that sounds great. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
We could use a robot voice there. So she made this little wishing game. I keep trying to think of like ways to describe these games. They're little bits of fiction tied around dice mechanics where you're not necessarily competing with each other, but just trying to get a wish. When you play the games as a kid and you had like, a piece of paper where you wrote down where you would live and who you'd be married to and, those sorts of things. That's not precisely what you're doing in these games, but it fits that sort of niche of like, you want to think about something, meditate on something that you would like to see in your life or you would like to see in life in general. And then you play through these seasonally themed little vignettes. And so she's done 8 of them, one for each of the solstice and the equinox, and then one for the halfway points between those.
Yeah, I'm a backer of that Patreon, and I think I wrote about it on our G Plus community at one point. But what struck me about those games, which I thought was really interesting, and since you've played them, you can actually confirm whether this is true or not. The games have a feel of like being, they're obviously new games. She just wrote them. But they feel really old. Like they feel like really, really like ancient. Like they've been around forever, Yeah. Like kind of the gaming equivalent of a folk tale or something,
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty apropos. And I think she would be flattered to hear that. Like it definitely feels like, you could come across a little cloth bound book in an antique store and you're like, what are these?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, that was the feeling I got. They have this. They feel like traditional games or something. Like it was. I don't know. I thought they were very interesting, and they also have just like a sweetness and an earnestness to them that is really. I guess like if you were a more cynical person, you would look at it and be like, oh, but if you're not an asshole, you would look at it and be like, wow, that looks really cool. Like I appreciate that. So
and they fit like a wonderful like. We're starting to get to the point now where we're making games that can fit into our lives in ways that we haven't before. Like the standard used to be, you depending on how old you were, like if you were in high school, you would set aside a weekend to role play.
Right? Yeah.
As an adult, you're like, can we get 4 straight hours where we're all together?
Yeah. Yeah. These
are like 15, 20 minutes. Maybe a little bit longer on some of them, but like they're just like, you don't have to organize them. You just have to be like, hey, we got 15, 20 minutes while we're waiting for our dinner to show up. Who wants to play a wishing game and pull out the dice?
We'll put a link in the show notes so that people can go check that out. All right, awesome. Hey, Dan, I gather you've been doing some Halloween games, namely The Final Girl and 10 Candles. You want to talk about those?
Sure, yeah. So The Final Girl, I'm not going to spend too much time on, except to say that we played a game where all of our characters were in costume because it was a crazy old man's Halloween party, and so he invited a bunch of people there and then started murdering them. So they all showed up in costume though, which is great. And like my new favorite character ever is a drunk man in a dinosaur costume. So if I can get that in every game from here on out, I'll be happy.
That's good.
Beyond that though, it was The Final Girl. It was great.
Did you guys actually write like the name of the costume on the index card as well?
We did, yeah.
Okay,
yeah, because there's no way we would have kept track.
Yeah, just so listeners understand, when you create characters, you create a big communal pool of characters, and you have to write, like, what is it, name the adjective noun to create the character, right? And so you did name the adjective noun in a blank costume.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Awesome. It's a good little
and
twist.
it led to a lot of good running gags about people having to explain their costumes and all of that over and over again. So
nice.
It's good. It's good Halloween fun.
Awesome.
Aside from that, though, also for Halloween, we played 10 Candles, which is a game that just came out. The rules were just released. It was kickstarted earlier this year. It just came out right before Halloween, so we actually got a chance to play it. It's by Stephen Dewey, I want to say.
Yeah, I think it's just the first thing he's done. His first big thing, right?
Yeah. The idea is you're playing in a room that's lit only by 10 tea candles. As you're playing, at the end of every scene, you extinguish one of the candles. The premise is that the earth has been, like, the sun has been blotted out and the stars have disappeared. The only light is the light that you have, and there's monsters that are coming to eat you, but they're afraid of the light. As things wind down, as society kind of collapses, light becomes more and more scarce. And so as you're playing, the light in the room actually dims as you get toward the final scene. And at the final scene, everyone dies, basically. So going in that your characters aren't going to survive, but it's to play and see, like, essentially something horrible that they've done in their past that shows what they're capable of. And so you're kind of playing to see if they will succumb to that in like a futile attempt to survive, or if they'll have, like, a more noble death. It's really good. I'm a big fan of gimmicks in games, and this has a ton of good ones. So
there's this really awesome horror game that uses a Jenga tower.
Yeah. I've heard about that one. Yeah. So I guess I'm in good company of people who enjoy gimmicks in their games. So this one is really good because the candles themselves are great. It provides a lot of tension because tea light candles are kind of inherently unreliable. And if the candles ever go out for any reason, they're just out.
Oh, nice.
That's just a scene that you lose, basically. You also, before you start playing, after you make your characters, you pass around an audio recorder, and everyone leaves a final message. Like, if anybody ever finds this message, these are the words we're leaving behind.
Oh, that's cool, yeah.
At the end of the game, as soon as the last candle goes out, you say this little ritual phrase, and then you just start playing the recording of all of the characters who you've just seen die. You, like, recover their final words. It's super effective. It's one of those things that could go either way, but when you're sitting there and it's pitch black and you're listening to this recording, it's really good.
That's cool. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I can't wait to check that one out. I backed that Kickstarter, but I kind of put it out of my mind ever since then. So it's kind of cool to be reminded of it, I guess. But awesome. Sounds like maybe we have a new Halloween tradition in the Gauntlet, possibly. I don't know.
Could be. Yeah.
You could put those tea candles in jack-o'-lanterns, right? Like everyone brings a small little pumpkin and they carve it, or several, or
yeah, that could be good.
Cool. Well, let's look at the list here and see what the next game is. Oh, I have, now we've just figured out how to pronounce this. The Dread Gesh of Duke Vulku.
Yes.
That's a very good name, I have to say.
Well, thank you.
Well, so tell us about that one. That's one of your games, right, Epi?
Yeah. So Dread, another one of those hinky, gimmicky games. It's been around for about a decade in printed form. And it's been in my life for almost 16 years now, I think. Something like that. It's kind of crazy. This is sort of my return to it post-Apocalypse World. I am taking lessons that have been learned since Apocalypse World has been released, and I've done a few of my games have kind of toyed around a little bit with Apocalypse World or whatever, and I found it to be kind of a wonderful match for the Jenga mechanic.
Cool, yeah.
So instead of doing the rolling to see if you get a 7, 9, or a 10 plus, you just basically take those options that they normally let you get, and break them up and say, you can pull for as many of those as you want. But as you're pulling, you obviously are putting yourself at risk.
I imagine most of our listeners are going to know what Dread is, but just in case they don't. Dread is a game by Epi. It's a classic. It's the king of, like, gimmick games, right? Yeah. It's a good one, though. It's a horror game in which there is a Jenga tower in the middle of the table, and whenever your character does something that they could possibly fail at, or that's challenging, or that could lead to their demise in some way, they have to pull from the tower. You physically have to pull from the tower, and if the tower collapses, your character's out of the game. So, sorry, just want to throw that out there. So
that's good.
Some context, yeah.
I get used to knowing how things work and forgetting how to tell people how they work.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
In the Dread Gesh of Duke Vulku, inspired by Clark Ashton Smith sword and sorcery stuff, you play a bunch of what I could refer to in the text as scholar or half scholars and scalds and bards or whatever that have all pledged yourself to this Duke Volku, and you're now under this magical imposition that you must follow his command. And then the host of the game, the GM, gets to be Duke Volku and take you on what is essentially a railroad in the sense of, it's an adventure where you have to follow what Duke Volku's telling you to do. So that,
he doesn't actually put you on a train.
No, he doesn't put you on a train. No. And then your recourse is the Dread Tower. Like you go to the Jenga Tower to do the things that you're commanded to do, but you also have to pull to do things, if you want to disobey the Duke's orders. And, there's some new stuff going on in the game, for people who already know how Dread works. There's, some things that I, in fact, borrowed from Dread House, the game that Emily Care Boss and I made for kids, where you go into a haunted house and people don't die in that one. But, there's like a little mechanic where you can pull blocks and hold on to them, and you have like a cache of these Jenga blocks that you can then put back in to do other things. And it's just sort of a way of taking your, what would normally be a full Jenga pull and turning it in, or two Jenga pulls and turning it into one. So making you more effective in certain ways, as long as you're following what it says on the sheet there. And then there's things like if you're disobeying the Duke, you have to pull with your offhand.
Okay. That's a nice touch. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. And like there's a few other, I get a little more gimmicky because I do enjoy the gimmicks there. So
no, I love stuff like that. I mean, the gimmick, it sounds like we're saying it pejoratively, or like but I'm not when I say it that way.
Right.
I love it.
Yeah, no, me either. Yeah.
I like any game where the tactile components or the specific mechanics you're engaging in echo like the themes of the game. Like I think that's really terrific.
Yeah.
So yeah, cool. And where can we find that one?
That one will be probably by the time this airs, it will be on the Worlds Without Master website, worldswithoutmaster.com. It will be in issue 10 of Worlds Without.
Awesome, cool. And just so listeners know, we're going to talk about Worlds Without Master a bunch later on in the episode. Yeah. Cool. Well, let me do some of the games I've been playing. I continued, or actually wrapped up, my 5-session run of Monster of the Week. It was great. I was running some mysteries that I've done before, so it was mostly I was just enjoying it to kind of see this brand new group of characters run through these mysteries that I've run before. And they were great. I really love the characters. I can't wait to revisit them in February. So that was pretty cool. And then continued with Doyle's game of Lamentations of the Flame Princess. The adventure is really just kind of taking off on that one, so I don't have a lot to say about it yet, except to say it was very OSR-y in the sense that the dungeon we were doing had a specific solution. there was like a puzzle, or not a puzzle, so to speak, but it wasn't like a per se puzzle, but it was a particular thing we had to do. And until we figured it out, we were, by the time we figured it out, 2 people were dead. So in the party, so it had lots of OSR flavor in that regard, but it was a lot of fun. Doyle's a pretty fun GM. So we all had a good time. Even the characters who, the players of the characters who died weren't too upset about it.
Well, I imagine even after the 2 players died, the other 24 of you could carry on pretty well without them, right?
My character, I found a safe spot and just cowered. So that's what I did. I had the full Lamentations experience of being in a dark crypt with my little candle and my little box of silver that I managed to find, and just waiting for the horror to pass. Right. So that's what I was doing. It's a pretty big group in that one. We've got 6 or 7 players. I think 6 players. I've been purposely kind of hanging back on that one a little bit, and kind of just enjoying everybody else's role play. It's kind of like my break in the middle of the week game. So that was pretty fun. And then what I really want to talk about, though, is my Halloween extravaganza. So we did, over Hangouts, we ran 3 different Lovecraftian role-playing games throughout the course of the day. We started with Cthulhu Dark in the morning. We moved on to the brand new game, Lovecraft-esque. That was the Gauntlet UK group running that. It was nighttime for them, but for us, it was the middle of the day. And then we wrapped up over here stateside with Society of Dreamers, which is our little Gauntlet tradition. We've talked about Cthulhu Dark and Society of Dreamers a fair amount, so I don't feel the need to go into those, except to say that it was a blast. And in both cases, I got to play with people that I don't get to see very often, so that was pretty fun. It was kind of good just to reconnect with some folks. Lovecraft-esque, though, since that's a brand new game, That's the one listeners will recall. We interviewed Josh Fox and Becky Annison, the designers of that game, when their Kickstarter was live. And the game is really good. It's great. They have really, I think what I liked the most about it was they have managed to to find the most direct route to like Lovecraftian terror, like there's not a lot of excessive rules. Like the game has like just everything you need to tell the story like in the most atmospheric way. And I love a game like that. I love a game that like cuts out all the bullshit and just kind of just has the most important stuff that you need, right, to get the desired effect. It's really terrific. It has this great narrative structure where there's just a single protagonist and you're all taking turns playing the single protagonist as they kind of investigate this, this like mounting horror that's kind of going on, right? And, but what you do is every round, one person's the narrator, the other person is the protagonist, and then all the other players, usually 2 or 3 other people, they're what are called the watchers. And so the narrator kind of like sets the scene and says what's going on, and they kind of like stop a little bit, and they let the watchers like chime in, like to add some like more atmospheric detail, right? So it's like, oh, well, you walk into the pub and there's a fire lit and there are a few people at the bar, and then the watcher might say, and one of the people turns and stares at you, untrustingly or whatever, right?
Right.
And then and the other one might say, oh, and there's a black cat that hisses at you or whatever, right? Like they add in the details, and then the protagonist player responds accordingly. Once you get the hang of it, it's just got this nice little flow to it, which I really enjoyed. And then in our particular game, we had there are these special cards that you can use to kind of, subvert the normal rules of the game. Like the game has rules about like what kinds of things you can introduce in your narration and what kind of things you can't in order to keep it like very Lovecraft, right? So no overt gore or violence or anything like that.
Does that escalate as the game goes on?
It does, yeah.
Okay.
And you don't actually see the overt like undeniably supernatural stuff until the very end, right?
Right.
Cool. It's all
that makes sense.
It's all just stuff that can be rationally explained away until then, right? You're like gathering clues the whole time, and then what everyone's doing is like throughout the scenes you're gathering clues, and everyone's making little personal notes of what they think the cosmic horror is at the end or whatever, the final horror or whatever it's called in the game. And so you kind of compare notes afterwards to see how everyone did. Did you all like guess it correctly or whatever? There are these special cards that let you subvert the normal rules of what kinds of things you can narrate into the scenes. And we got one that was so good, it basically caused the protagonist to be killed in the middle of the story. And it was really shocking. Like, it was really shocking because we really quite liked the protagonist, but David played this card and we had to narrate the protagonist being killed by this cult. And it was really shocking and jaw-dropping, but then it was awesome because we actually like shifted perspective. So it was kind of like Psycho, right? Like, when Janet Leigh dies, halfway through Psycho, and then it picks up with another perspective. It was a lot like that. So really fun game. I can't stress enough that listeners should go, find this one once it's available, generally, after the Kickstarter stuff is done. So yeah, Lovecraft-esque.
Cool.
And so the next game on the list is, oh, I can't wait to hear about this one. You must tell us about Sanguine's Usagi Yojimbo, Epi. I have been seeing you post about this, and
right.
I don't mind admitting that I have not been able to read all the posts, but I know that you're posting about it a lot. Tell us now, why is this game so great?
I have a fascination with Sanguine's games, the mechanics in particular. They hit a spot in me that I want to engage with as a player. A lot of the games that I design, I do very much enjoy playing, but they don't have the sort of intricate like player options to plug together that D&D from 3rd edition on does, or Champions. Or I'm thinking like, I did a lot of gaming in the 90s, and that was a lot of what was being tossed at us in the 90s.
Sure, yeah.
And Sanguine Games definitely has that. I've been watching them over the years. I've played a few of them, but like not had a good opportunity to put together like a group, because one of the things about those kinds of games is that you need the players to be on board and ready to engage with them as deeply as the game desires. Like, people need to want to look through the book and figure out what gift they're going to get for their character next, right? Like, they need to...
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, if you don't have everyone at the table thinking, all right, what is our best tactical choice during this fight? Then you end up relying on somebody, usually the GM, to tell people how that works, or each time. And then the game doesn't really sing the way it does. And I would read these books, and I knew that these games could sing, because I could hear, like, you know, I could just, in the back of my brain, I could hear that song.
Right, yeah.
I was posting about this online, and I was doing the thing, I kind of refer to this as gamer flirting, right? Where you have a group of people who are all interested in playing games, and you know that one or two of them in particular, you're like, you guys, I think you're going to like this game. But instead of going to them and go, hey guys, I got a new game, I just started posting about this game online.
Right,
started talking about what I love about it. And then let that kind of boil over until they're like, all right, let's play this game you're talking about. And doing that, I, you know, put together like a group of 3 players to play this. And what we did, Emily's one of the players, Emily Carebass, who's a fellow game designer, and my wife. Emily and I, we watched a bunch of samurai films. So Usagi Yojimbo is based on the comic Usagi Yojimbo, which is about a samurai rabbit. That comic draws a lot from the samurai films. I mean, the Yojimbo part of Usagi Yojimbo is straight from Kurosawa's film
Right,
Yojimbo.
yeah.
We watched a bunch of them, and you could tell, reading through the mechanics of Usagi, you could watch these samurai fights unfold, and you were like... So the game has these ways of dealing with initiative where instead of deciding who goes first, it doesn't really care that much who goes first, and instead... what it cares about is who has focus and who is reeling. And focus means you have a token that lets you interrupt what everyone's going to do. And reeling means the only thing you can do is dodge. Otherwise, you're just reactive, which means on your turn, you'll get to do something. And when it's not your turn, you can parry or dodge or counterattack. And since this game allows for counterattacks rather than just saying you have to beat armor class or something like that, then what happens when you go to fight someone, if they're ready and able to counterattack, it's just as dangerous as if it was their turn and they're deciding to attack you.
Okay.
And then if they're focused, they can interrupt what you're about to do. So what that does is when we play the game, the first thing everyone does is they try and focus, and then you have those tense, like, scenes that you have in the samurai films where people circle each other.
Oh,
just
nice.
slowly,
Okay.
Pacing with their swords out, waiting to see who's going to make the first move. And then when somebody makes the first move, everything just cascades so fast, and somebody's on the ground, and everyone else is like, okay, that was a good fight. I'm going home. Like, I'm getting out of here. And it does that over and over. And we had these 3 characters. One was a disgraced general who wanted to be proper, and he carried this war fan that he would always have out, but it was great because he could fight with it. And then another was like this. And they're all, it's anthropomorphic, right? So this guy's a Doberman Pinscher who's a disgraced general. That's important. Another one, it's a panda that's a sumo wrestler, which is, that's important. And the third,
that seems racist to pandas, but okay.
But yeah. It's a little pandist, yeah. And then the third was this goat. He's a horrifying death machine is what he is. He's got the big sword, and he screams in that goat human-like scream as he runs into battle. And
that's terrifying.
But it's great. It's a fun game. We engaged almost every aspect. We have one battle where we used at least looked up every single specialized rule for things like concealment and how much damage you take falling because somebody fell out of a tree. And all of us were so happy to be looking up these rules, which is usually the opposite of those situations.
Yeah.
I really, really love the game. It's when the rules work, or rather, as the rules work, they fit together in such a way. But you need people who are willing to look at them and say, okay, I want to figure out how they work, and I want to be able to decide, make informed decisions along the way of what my character is going to do.
I love, as you were describing it, and also something I think about a lot, I love that moment in samurai movies, or say the final scene of Kill Bill Volume 1, right? When Uma Thurman and the villain character are kind of staring each other down.
Yeah.
And I love that that tension, that staring and circling and sizing people, each other up, leading up to that final clash. That's really cool. Dan and I are actually working on a little samurai game that tries to replicate that a little bit.
Cool.
And I don't want to say any more than that, but I don't think Dan was ready for me to say anything about that.
I wasn't.
Oh,
No.
You heard it here first, folks.
But anyway, but it's because I like that. I love that. I've always wanted a game that can adequately express that kind of combat, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's pretty cool. I'll have to check that out. That sounds pretty badass. It's awesome. Usagi Yojimbo. Sweet.
Yes.
And everyone should also go check out Epi's posts meant to deceive and lure, apparently.
Right.
Right, yeah.
See, what you do is you just build up a big community of people who just play games with you whenever you want. That's the way to handle it. So, like you do with swords. So
Yeah. Yes.
Awesome. Well, okay, so we've got a couple more games. I think I want to hold Golden Sky Stories for the end. So why don't we let's talk about Amazons.
Okay.
We'll put you on deck again, Epi.
Right.
What is Amazons all about?
Amazons is a game by Vincent Baker.
Okay.
It is a game that will be out in the 11th issue of Worlds Without Masters.
Oh,
So,
okay, cool. Awesome. Nice little preview for the listeners.
Yes. So we're looking ahead, and hopefully that will be fairly soon now. I think you need. I can't remember. I think you need 4 players or more. Maybe you get away with 3 or more players. But the way it works is that there are 2 Amazons in the game. There's 2 players, each one playing an Amazon. And then everyone else is a GM. They have rules for the GM to figure out what the Amazons are up against. The Amazons have rules. If you've had a chance to look at any of his stuff that he's doing with... It's his Venus games that he's doing now, his Sword and Sorcery games.
Oh, yes. I can't recall the name, but yeah. I know what you're talking about.
I'm on the spot here. Freebooting Venus.
Freeboot, yeah, that's it.
That's one of them. I was thinking of the other one, but they're both kind of, they're tied together. But it's that sort of thing where he says, here's a list of experiences, and they're all these very Sword and Sorcery Amazon-style experiences. And the Amazon's goal is to have as many of those experiences as they want to have. And then here's a list of bad experiences. And the host's goal is or the GM's goal is to make sure that those Amazons get as many of those bad experiences along the way to those good experiences, or the experiences that they want. It's a really neat game, and one of the things that I really loved about the game, there's 2 bits that I really loved about the game. Actually, there's a lot I really loved about the game, which is why I begged him to let me publish it. The first thing that I really loved is that it breaks up this player GM paradigm in such a way that looking at the game, I immediately wanted to hack it and make my own game and say, instead of Amazons, Space Wizards, right? And so I say Space Wizards, and because it's I can literally design the game so I can say, hey, we're going to play Space Wizards, and I'm a Space Wizard, and you're a GM. And that's perfectly fine. Because normally when you design a game and you go to play with someone, you have to be the GM most of the time to get them. And there's just ways that Amazon works where that's not the case. And
it's interesting.
That is really nice. And the other is I really like the combat system in there. That might be too much to go into at the moment. But anyways, it reminds me of Tunnels and Trolls in a grand way. And I'll leave it at that.
All right, awesome. Is Tunnels and Trolls another one of those games you're trying to get your friends to play with?
Yes, I've been talking quite a bit about it. Well, the deluxe Tunnels and Trolls just came out, so I've been reading that book, and that's a game that I've loved for a long time. It just does some neat things, and I want to just basically talk with people about it because it's
about Tunnels and Trolls.
Yeah. Well, it's this game where I do this thought exercise where I think, what if our hobby started with Tunnels and Trolls rather than D&D? It was pretty close to the beginning there. And honestly, when it comes to things like that, you don't know which one will take off and be the industry leader, the one that sets the culture. And I think if Tunnels and Trolls had been, games would be significantly different, despite both of them having very similar sort of root material and whatnot.
Sure.
So.
Yeah. Well, in what ways? Just out of curiosity.
Well,
since we're talking about it.
The combat in Tunnels and Trolls is a bunch of people, instead of rolling to hit and then rolling for damage, which is a pretty standard, I wait my turn, I roll to hit, and then I roll for damage. That pattern plays out in, I would 90%, 99% of all role-playing games. Obviously not all of them, and a lot of indie games get beyond that. But, so many of them, that's how it plays out. In Tunnels and Trolls, there's no waiting for your turn. Everyone on your side rolls all of your dice, and you add them all together, and you compare them to your opponents, and the losing side takes the difference in damage. And that alone just changes up, And then the neat thing about that is that if you don't like that formula, because that's a pretty obvious and bare formula, right? If they have more dice than you,
sure,
it's grim. from that point on, you say, okay, we're going to try and do this thing. And it's up to you to negotiate with the GM to be like, hey, if we can work them into a hallway where only 2 of them can come at us at a time, can we reduce the number of dice they can roll?
Yeah.
But that's, most of that isn't like calcified into rules. Most of that is like, oh yeah, let the GM figure it out, and you have this neat negotiating thing.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, no, that's neat. Yeah, it's almost like problem solving as a mechanic or something.
Right.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Awesome. Well, let's talk about Golden Sky Stories, Dan.
All right.
So we've talked about Golden Sky Stories before. I'll let you kind of cover it. We've been talking a lot.
Yeah, sure. So I don't think we've really talked about it in depth because we played it before we started the podcast.
Oh, is that true? Oh, okay. All right. Well, go for it.
I think we reference it a lot just because it's such a weird outlier in the games that we actually play. Golden Sky Stories is a Japanese RPG, but there was a Kickstarter to do a translation of it. The base vanilla Golden Sky Stories is about these animals who have the ability to turn into small human children. And so they live in a small Japanese town, and they make friends with the children in the town, and they help solve problems and make people happy. And that is it. Like, it's a diceless game, and you have powers that you form by making friends, and the more friends you have, the more powerful you are, and then you can do wonderful things that make people happy. That's the base game. It's great. It's something that's so far from what we normally play that it's like a great palate cleanser.
Listeners, Dan tried to put this on the calendar for literally years, and I just hatefully resisted it for so long. But it was a mistake because the game is really good. It's fun. It's
true, yeah. And because I was in on the Kickstarter, and so I was preaching about this game for years and years before Jason would ever let it hit the table. But it turns out it's great. And so the game we were playing this time was a hack of it. And it's a hack. It's an original hack made by the translator of the Japanese game, Aaron Clooney. This one, instead of being animals in a small Japanese town, you are all monsters in a fantasy town. And so it's a little fantasy town that's on, a road between 2 more interesting places in this fantasy world. And so adventurers and stuff stroll by, and they'll stop and get supplies, but then they go on to do whatever they're doing in the mountains or heading to the capital. And on the fringes of the town are all these monsters that just because it's a little small town, everybody kind of gets along, and so these monsters are there, and they're hanging out and making friends and helping townspeople.
It was fun. I liked it a lot. I enjoyed it. I thought our characters were really great. I'm not going to go into it right now because the thing about Golden Sky Stories, the magic of Golden Sky Stories, to my mind, is you're supposed to always be heartwarming, right? That's the goal. Like, you're supposed to do things that are delightful and heartwarming and cute, and that's not you may not necessarily be inclined to roleplay that naturally, except it has a fan mail system that you desperately want to take advantage of, and so you do whatever it's going to take to get those sweet, sweet fan mails, right? And so every time we've played it, it's been that way. It's like, oh man, what adorable shit can I do right now? so I can get, what are they called in Golden Sky Stories? Like dream points or something?
Yes, they're dreams.
Dreams, yeah. That like instant reward aspect of the game to enforce the style of play that the game is going for, it works really well. It's pretty awesome. So.
Yeah, and it's sort of you naturally become competitive, and so it's like, well, I'm going to out-cute you, motherfucker. You think that was cute.
Yeah. you thought that was cute. Wait till you see what I'm about to do. Yeah. No, it's great. I liked it a lot. Is there anything else you want to say about it? I mean,
well, I was just going to mention, like, just our little cast of characters was a gelatinous cube, an adorable gelatinous cube, an adorable cockatrice, and a rock man. And they were walking around this fantasy town.
It was a Galabdur, actually.
A Galabdur, yes. They were just walking around making friends. It was great.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. Yeah, I was really, I played the little gelatinous cube, and the way I played her, because I always have to have a little dark edge to everything I do, despite the game, is she was a gelatinous cube that had like a little girl's skeleton inside of her.
Oh.
And the skeleton had a bow in its head. So.
Like, anyway. I can see, like, in my mind's eye, the silhouette of the hill on top of which you have the the cube, the cockatrice, and the rockman, just sitting as the sun is setting, looking out. Yes. You know, you can see their silhouettes and see right through the cube for the skeleton inside.
It was just like that. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. The cockatrice was fun too. He was called King Henry. He was only a week old, but he like pretended that like he was the sovereign of everything, you know. And he had a crown that he was always trying to push on his head because it didn't fit right and everything. And yeah, it was really cute.
Yeah, good stuff. I think that this one, what did you think about this one in comparison to just vanilla Golden Sky Stories?
I liked it better just because I connect better with fantasy stuff than I do like anime stuff.
All right, fair enough. Yeah, like it felt a little bit like we weren't playing it quite as genuine maybe as we were with the vanilla version.
Maybe, I don't know.
But,
I thought we were doing fine.
Yeah, everything had a little bit of a darker edge to it, though, because, you know, I mean, these are monsters. Like, they're gonna have that, I think. I think it's harder to get away from that. Like, when you transform into from a kid to a dog, you know, that's a lot more easy to do, like, happy, feel-good stuff than when you transform from a kid to a monstrous gelatinous cube, right? So...
I also like that our characters lived in an evil temple, the Temple of Misery and Woe, ruled over by a lich named Magic Jack. So, all right, cool. Golden Sky Stories. It's a great little game. I like that a lot. And also, Dan made a really, really magnificently good Google Sheet for online play. So, kudos to you. It was really
I'm starting to spend every week. I spend more and more time in the Google spreadsheet editor.
Yeah,
I'm not sure that's healthy, but.
You're putting out there's some good stuff. They're great. Awesome. Let's go to the next segment. Our next segment is called Giving Me Life. This is where we discuss things that are not necessarily related to role-playing games that we're really into right now. Epi, why don't you start?
At this very moment, it is Wosho Sto Remo.
You may want to unpack that for us.
Yeah. Wait, it's not obvious? It's where it's where the woe... Shosto Almo. Obviously. It's Worldwide Short Story Reading Month, where you attempt to read a short story a day. I've tried this a couple times in the past and did not make it through all 30 days doing it. I'm ready this time though. I am armed with a stack of 25 anthologies, including several of them that have short stories that are only like a page long. Some of them only like a paragraph long. So for those, today, for example, I had an eye exam in which, they dilated my pupils and made it impossible for me to read for several hours during the day when I had foolishly planned to do my reading for the day. So
today Life always finds a way, doesn't it?
Yeah. Today I might be reading a paragraph long story, but, so that one's pretty exciting for me now.
Do you have any recommendations for folks? Have you read anything good yet that you'd want to pass on?
Well, so far I've read, I've been doing a lot of reading of introductions to anthologies. I love reading the introduction to anthologies. If you get a hold of them, like from the 80s and the 70s and the 60s, before the internet, right? Because these are the blog posts of yesteryear. This is where people go to complain about and sing the praises of things that they love in ways that kind of wear me down nowadays. There's one I have that's called, I think it's called The Book of the Dead. It's an anthology of zombie stories put out in the 80s. And the beginning introduction is this big defense for enjoying zombies, like saying, we're not horrible people that will eat your children in the night just because we like zombies or zombie films. And it's so interesting to read that today.
That's fascinating. It's really fascinating.
Right?
Yeah. Wow.
Because that's only 30 years ago.
Right.
And, like, now there's plush zombies. Like, kids have zombie quilts. I'm sure there's cartoon zombies. Oh, there's, like, Plants vs. Zombies. I've seen those as toys for kids and things. But back then, there was, like, this real satanic panic type scare.
Wow. Yeah, that's fascinating. Wow. Huh.
Yeah, so it's fun to, kind of read those and get an idea of what life was like for those people who engaged in that genre during those eras. But the introductions don't count as short stories, so I warn you, you have to read the stories themselves.
So what are the rules of this? Could I just read 30 short stories on the 30th and say I did it?
If you can. Go
Okay.
for it. That's
All right.
That's such a Dan move. I just want to throw that out there. God, this was Dan move ever.
I totally thought I was going to be able to do that in years past, and I have learned that if I don't do it every day, I'm woefully. And also it's November, so there's NaNoWriMo that people are doing, the National
Right.
Novel Writing Month. There's the National Game Design Month, Naga Demon, I think is what they're calling it.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Yeah.
And then if you're in the States, there's Thanksgiving and all that time you have to spend with family. Very tight month to try
It's a
and
packed
get
month. Yeah, it's pretty
yeah.
packed. Yeah, cool. Awesome. Was there anything else you want to talk about?
Right. Well, when you talked about this, I am currently going back to school as a older, wiser learner, as we're called, owls.
Okay.
I did not make that one up. I will not take credit for that.
Okay.
I've been thinking about how the business side of all of this has been, publishing games has been going, and running into some questions about how numbers and accounting work. And so I decided I was going to take some classes in accounting, and discovered, oddly enough, that I love accounting.
I do too. Those are my favorite classes in college. Personally.
I mean, I mentioned before the older, like the 1990s games like Champions or something like that. Like,
right, yeah.
There's something in the accounting equation and building a Champions character. There's like, they have the same beating heart.
I agree. Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah.
And, it just draws me in, and I was like, oh, and my original, when I went to school way back decades ago, I went for English with an emphasis in creative writing, and the difference between those classes and what I'm doing now, where there's a right answer, and not only is there a right answer, but I can double check it, and there's like systems in place to double check it, and it just feels so neat and compact and deliciously right, So I've been enjoying the hell out of those.
Accounting, awesome.
Yeah, I was skeptical when I saw accounting on the list, but you make a very passionate argument for accounting.
Argument, yeah.
Yeah. This threw me for a loop, because when I went to take the classes, it was simply out of necessity. Like, I wanted to really understand how that side. It was becoming more and more of a fog to me, particularly when you've got crowdfunding sources coming in, and they're coming in via PayPal and other ways to get the money to you, and at multiple points they're reporting to the government how much money you're making, but they may be reporting the same money, and what are you responsible for, and bringing it in and talking to our accountant about it, and not knowing if his disinterest was because he doesn't quite know what's going on because it's all brand new stuff, or if it's because he knows and he's just bored with the questions. I don't know. I was just like, I need to figure this out myself. So
I've seen on G Plus, I've seen some gamers and game designers and game designer adjacent people kind of talking about the business side of things, and even offering up free advice about if you want some tips on this or that. I think that's really terrific. I think that's a distinctly gamer community thing to me. Let's help each other out with this stuff, and I've often thought gosh, I should do a little clinic on IP related matters or something.
Yeah,
but
absolutely. Cause the business side of it is as much a game as the game side of it, and I'm taking, along with this, taking a class in business, like an introduction to business, and it very much feels like is game design all the time. Like, people are constantly worried about how this fits into there and what is going to be our optimal incorporation. Like, are we going to be a partnership or a
Yeah.
But anyways, it's very. I find that stuff super interesting, but it's also something that's very near and dear to my heart right now. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Cool. Dan, what's giving you life?
All right, so I feel like mine is a really good counterpoint to Epi's, which is very, very high-minded and cerebral, and mine is videos of children falling over on the internet. So bear with me. There's a subreddit that is just nothing but short videos of children falling over. It is called Children Falling Over.
It's very aptly titled. Yeah, I
yeah,
like that
yeah,
about Reddit.
Yeah. And this is great. So you can go there, and I will go there, and I will just binge watch like 20 minutes of clips of kids falling over in the middle of my day. And it's great because like everyone, like it puts you in this weird emotional state when you're watching it because you know at some point a child is going to fall over. But the key is you don't know when, you don't know why, because children fall over for like no good goddamn reason. So you don't know when it's going to happen, but you know at some point it will. And so the best ones like tell a little story and they'll walk you down this path where like there's a little girl and she's trying to learn how to ride a bike and her dad's running along beside her and like it just keeps going on and you're waiting for her to fall, but she's like, and she wobbles, but she doesn't fall. And then out of nowhere, another kid runs onto the frame and just falls over for no reason. And, it's amazing. Like I could watch that all day. And so I do. So, and importantly, I want to say this is not children getting hurt.
Right.
They will hop back up. Like children are very resilient. They'll hop back up. They're laughing most of the time. It's just really funny watching them fall down. So that's it.
Awesome. Great. The Gauntlet loves children. One more bit of evidence there.
I know. Yeah. So. I wanted to get that one. Like after Paul Sega made such a beautiful speech about, spending time with his son. I was like, yeah. I like kids too. I like to watch them fall over on the internet. So.
Awesome. The thing giving me life this week is also kind of a Reddit thing, interestingly enough. Yesterday, I think it was yesterday, this fan theory, and I love a fan theory, this fan theory about Star Wars, and I'm not a Star Wars guy, but I really love this one. This fan theory about Star Wars is like consuming the Star Wars fandom right now as of the day of this recording. And it all started with this guy on Reddit who created this very, very detailed and loaded with evidence post that Jar Jar Binks is a Sith Lord. Here's the deal. He basically breaks it. He doesn't, like, as he's like doing all this evidence that Jar Jar is a Sith Lord, you can tell he doesn't really like actually think this is true, right? He's just kind of laying it all out there. But then he starts to make the case that George Lucas probably intended for Jar Jar to be revealed as a Sith Lord in like episode 2 or episode 3, possibly, probably episode 2. And that case is very compelling. And so, I'm not going to get into all the details of it right now, but it's super interesting. You have this like nice, like lingering, like, gosh, what if George Lucas had gone through with that and made Jar Jar Binks Jar Jar was supposed to be like the evil equivalent of Yoda, like Yoda was a bumbling old man, but then he was revealed to be a Jedi Master, in episode 5. The idea was that we'd have like a sort of mirrored moment in the prequel trilogy with Jar Jar being a Sith Lord. And he lays out a really, really strong case for it. And like the Star Wars fandom is like eating it up and loving it. And so it's pretty interesting to watch it all play out. Yeah.
So what's the explanation for why he didn't do that?
The speculation by this guy is that I think they thought Jar Jar as a lovable hero was going to go over better. And because he didn't, they decided not to invest such a big like plot twist in the character. But the case is really, really strong. Like, there's a lot of, I don't know if you remember the prequel trilogy much, but one of the principal villains of the second movie of the prequel trilogy is Count Dooku, which was played by Christopher Lee. But that character has always felt like kind of pasted in like at the last minute and not really like a part of the bigger story. And it's thinking, the thinking is like that was supposed to be like evil Jar Jar, right? Huh. Who was like taking up that mantle. So a really, really strong case made for it. It's pretty interesting. It's worth checking out. So if you love a fan theory.
Yeah.
And I do.
Yeah. I do love a fan theory, though, sir.
I do too. Yeah, I've lost whole afternoons to Game of Thrones fan theories. So it's just a rabbit hole of madness. Cool. Let's go to the next segment. So our main topic today is principally Worlds Without Master, since we have Epi on the show, but we're going to talk about a couple of other things that he's been up to too. But let's start with Worlds. Epi, just kind of give us an overview of what Worlds Without Master is.
It's a question that I should have a really tight soundbite for, that I do not. It is a sword and sorcery magazine, primarily published in PDF format. I'm working on getting some physical copies out there at some point. We're on issue 9 right now. We have, in each issue, we've had 2 pieces of sword and sorcery fiction. We've had a sword and sorcery comic. We've had a game. And we've had like a little bit of what I call miscellanies, which are...
Yes, yeah, those are great.
Yeah, lists of 3 dozen blah, blah, blahs. Usually those blah, blah, blahs are more exciting than the syllables blah, blah, blah would
We've had more fun with the one for Invisible Empire than like...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we've had so much fun with that one.
Yeah, that was... well, we could talk a little bit about those, actually, because those are a delight to put together, and also the last thought for every issue. And so they sit in that spot where I'm like, oh, I just need to do this to get done. I hate this more than anything else. And then what usually happens is that Emily and I will go for a walk, and I'll just start, spitballing them and writing them down or whatever, and they'll come out and it'll all be good. But it's like, yeah, they're always the last final nail, which is always the hardest thing to do for something. It's always the final. So it's funded by Worlds Without Master is funded through Patreon, which is a crowdfunding website. People go there and they pledge to pay a certain amount per issue that is released. And if you pledge to pay $2.99 or more, then you'll get the full issue. Otherwise, you'll just get the fiction that's in the issue. And also, all the fiction that I write is freely available. If you go to medium.com/Epidiah, we'll probably give you the link there because I can't remember what all mine. If you go to worldswithoutmaster.com, you'll find the fiction there as well. But it's all freely available.
I say it all the time. It is one of the very best values in role-playing games right now because the stories are great. I'm story-wise, I'm on issue like 5 or 6 right now. I've read all the games though.
Nice.
in all 9 issues that I have access to. I think I have a preview of 10 right now, right, or something like that, or is 10
right? Yeah. So we can talk about 10 in a little bit, but.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. But so yeah, it's tremendous value. I mean, the stories are great. The game is excellent. Like we've only played 2 of them, but I've read all of them, and I can't wait to try some of them. And then the little table, the miscellany in the back is great. Like the little table, you get all that for at the pledge level of $2.99. It's really, really terrific. Now I actually got in on the Patreon late, and so I had to pay $3.99 for the first couple issues, but totally worth it. Like it's so. I'm glad we're telling our listeners about it because if they have not gotten in on Worlds Without Master, they really need to. And art too. We didn't really mention the art.
Oh yeah,
like, there's a lot of like really tremendous art in there as well.
That's one of the most astounding things to me about doing it because it is the part that makes it feel like a real thing to me. This is weird. I should apologize to all the authors I published and all the game designers I published. My history with sword and sorcery begins in a library and pulling books off of the shelves and just staring at the covers, right? Like that's not even... You don't even start reading them before you start entering these strange and disparate worlds. And that's the art that does that. And so when Rachel Kahn did my first illustrated cover, right? Because the first 2 covers were just black and white. It was just the logo.
The logo, yeah.
And then the third cover is my attempt to do sort of a 60s.
It was like a psychedelic logo.
Yeah. And then Rachel Kahn was the first one that I asked to do, because of the art that she did for One Winter's Dew, which is the story that inspired the Wolfspell game. And oh my God, the art she did for that was so amazing. Just so amazing. And then, so I asked her to do that cover. When that cover came in and I slapped that logo on that cover, there was just this moment of, I've done it. Like I want to go back in time.
Yeah.
And go to young Epi and say, this will happen.
Coming. Yes. Well, that's a pretty good segue for, you kind of answered it, I guess, but I had a question when I look at Worlds Without Master, when I look at the content in there and the art style and all that, to me, it's a thing that feels like simultaneously very, very like fresh as far as like role-playing games today, but it also like has this really like throwback quality to it. Was that kind of what you were going for? I mean...
Right. So, In a way, yeah, definitely. Because one of the things that we do quite a bit here when we do role-playing games, we just kind of wallow in our own nostalgia. And that sounds dismissive, and I don't mean for that to be like that, because there's a reason why we've hung on to these things. Sometimes it's simply because it's, something we encountered in our youth. But other times, it's because it really has an impact on you, right? And so sword and sorcery is really important to me in certain ways, and I kind of rejected it for a while. Like, I had this, I'm a mature adult, the mature adult phase. I went through that for a little bit, and
now that you're doing accounting, you can enjoy all the things from your childhood, right? Yeah.
Oh, man, I keep doing this backwards. I should have been doing the accounting during the mature adult phase, because the ridiculous thing I was doing during the mature adult phase was getting a degree in creative writing, and I was trying to do like all this mature lit fic. When it turned out, everything I wanted to, my fingers just wanted to type like overwrought words and, take us into worlds where Vikings are half swallowed by snakes and then freed by their companions, who then turn the snakes into a shield. I was definitely inspired by a lot of the classic sword and sorcery stuff that gave birth to our hobby in the first place, right? I wanted to go back to it and engage it both with the fiction, but also one of the opportunities I see in Worlds Without Master is the ability to engage with fiction and interact with it, to bring what we've learned about interacting with fiction from role-playing into just fiction itself, right? A lot of the stuff in Worlds Without Master, we say at the end, if you check out the end of each magazine, we talk about the realms, which is the idea that people that publish in it, you have to check each issue to find out who, but some people that publish in it will allow you to write and publish stories in their own worlds, in their worlds. In fact, my stuff is very much like that, and all the miscellany is freely open for anyone. So if you just sat down, rolled a few dice on some of those miscellany and said, oh yeah, I want to find I can't remember any of the miscellany results off the top of my head, but the Silent Emperor is in there. Like, I think he's in half of the miscellanies at some point.
Yeah, he makes a lot of appearances.
Yeah. And then write a story about the Silent Emperor. Go for it. I've got your back.
Yeah. All right. So my story about getting strapped to the back of a giant eagle and flown into the sun is okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm down with that.
So we've made like kind of oblique mention to it so far, but one of the issue that has the game Invisible Empire, which I actually like more than Swords Without Master personally. I like Swords Without Master as well, but I really love Invisible Empire.
Awesome.
It has the miscellany of all the different ways the Silent Emperor, who is a character from the game, will kill you, and they are all incredibly ornate. They're a delight to read. Like I think after the last time we played it, I think we spent probably an hour just like going through those and having a good time with those. Yeah, those are great. Okay, well let's. I mentioned swords. Why don't we talk about swords? Let's transition to that. Awesome game. Another game. That's probably another one we played a lot from the collection. It's probably the most visible game from Worlds Without Master as far as what's come out of it. Tell us a little bit about swords and like your. Kind of like your design goal with that game, because it's really quite, I don't know, it felt super fresh to me. Like I hadn't really encountered anything like it.
So Swords begins, turn the clock back to the year 2000. I'm not going to know the year, actually. It would be 2010. I actually do know the year. I'm pretty sure that's it. A group of us are doing a thing where we call it a game in a jiffy. There's a convention in Western Massachusetts called JiffyCon. That we were going to, and we decided to try as a challenge to ourselves to come up with and then write an entire game and then publish it in the week leading up to JiffyCon. And we had done it once, three of us, with a game called Trial and Terror, which is a Trial and Terror Supernatural Victims Unit. It's a Law and Order urban supernatural game. It's a lot of fun.
I see what you guys did there.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun. It should get some love. So if it's free, if you go to Dig 1,000 Holes and look at my other games, you'll find it. So that was the first one we did. And then the next year we decided to do one. And the idea for these challenges was we didn't know, even going into it, what game we'd make. Like, we didn't even know the idea of the game. We would sit down and start spitballing ideas until something stuck. The second one, the game that stuck, was called Monkey Dome. Monkey Dome came out of a comment that a friend of ours had made about the movie Thunderdome, Beyond Thunderdome. Right, yeah. And Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome.
Right, yeah.
And that movie, we realized, had a little trouble figuring out whether it was this grim, gritty, post-apocalyptic, the road kind of thing, or if it was this zany, the kind of thing you would see Brendan Fraser in.
High camp spectacle.
Right,
Tina
yeah.
Turner, yeah.
and for us, the pivot point is this moment where somebody gets hit with a shovel. And, like, when you think about the two different ways that can go, where the zany is where he gets hit and it goes boing, and he cross-eyed and falls over. I think that might be what happens in the movie. I can't remember anymore. And then the grim is this horrifying, realistic depiction of what happens when you actually swing a shovel at someone, right?
Okay.
And so the mechanic are these two dice. You roll these two dice. One's the zany die. They're both 6-sided dice. One's the zany, one's the grim. And on your turn, before you do the thing you're going to do, you roll the two dice, and whichever one comes up is going to determine what you're going to do. And it's played largely for laughs, but also for gut punches in that game. It's really it's super effective for a number of reasons. Like, for instance, we say zany instead of funny because you tell people to be funny, and that's the death of that. It won't work.
Yeah.
But if you're like, just do something zany, then, oh, okay. And then we'll enjoy that. And we've had horrifying moments happen in the game, and we've had, like, crying, laughing so hard. And we played that game. We played it again. We wrote it. We had a fun time writing it. Lots of sleep deprivation. Finally got it printed out. We were taking the train from New York up to Massachusetts, and we were bored on the train. We decided to play it again. We'd already played it, I think 4 times. We were just in love with this game. And on the train, one of the guys involved in it, his name is Jason Keeley. He actually works for Paizo now. So look at that pedigree. He said, hey, why don't we do a Western one? And we used the tones Young and Guns.
Nice. That's nice. Yeah, that's good.
And that worked so well. And so we played that. And basically, Monkey Dome and this Young Guns one, they were the perilous phase from Swords Without Master. And while we were playing that hack, I was looking out, watching I just distinctly remember, like, the trees passing by and just thinking, I could finally play the sword and sorcery game that I want here. Like, this is something that I've been trying to get at since somebody first introduced me to role playing back in the mid 80s, right? Like, this is not, I mean, like, it sounds like because I don't think any genre has been more well represented in role playing games than sword and sorcery. But, like, we all have our own take on it, right? We all have our own thing we want. And this game very much felt like it. So yeah, that's where it begins. And then it took a couple years of finding out the other phases and how they were going to work, and building on the other threads. Because we had a few in the beginning, but, Monkey Dome has things like the threads. All of this isn't going to make sense to people who don't know about Swords Without Master, right, so I shouldn't just throw jargon out like that.
I suspect most of our listeners are going to be familiar with it, but the idea is you are each playing. I'm really good at 30-second overviews of games. The idea is you are each playing a rogue that is engaged in some kind of adventure. You have 2 dice that are 2 different tones that are, I think it's like grim and jovial. Is that right?
Glum and jovial.
Or glum and jovial. And basically those dice, they kind of dictate how you have to narrate your actions and your scene. And there's also the part of the game I actually enjoy the most is, you also like you're calling out several like thematic elements or details in the story that you go back and reincorporate into like kind of the finale, towards the end of the game. So, it's pretty awesome. Sorry, I don't want to interrupt you.
Oh, no, that's great. That's exactly what we needed there. That's the basic origin of the game. And then from there, as I was making it, I found, I had to go through a lot of decisions about things like, did I want to give it a world or keep it separate and generic? Because the word generic just sounds so horrible. When we published Dread, after we published Dread, I realized that I probably should have had some sort of world in it. There's a value to attaching a setting to your game. There's two values. Number one, there are people who just want that. They're going to want a setting of some sort. And number two, if you have a setting attached to your game and people see the potential of doing something else with it, they can do that, and then they could talk about that on the internet. And that's advertising. And there will be looking forward to the future with Swords, because I definitely, there's more to come out for Swords. There'll probably be setting books for it to do different kinds of settings with material like that.
That's awesome. Well, one of the things that kind of reminds me of something I was thinking about earlier was one of the nice things about Swords Without Master is it has a really, really vibrant and active G+ community.
Yeah,
it's a great community. I'm just a lurker there. I don't really like participate much, but I lurk. People are like posting their pictures of their eidolons. An eidolon, for listeners, it's sort of a it's a thing in another media that like kind of inspires your rogue, right? Like it's usually a picture, but it could be almost anything, right?
Right.
Like a story or something like that. And so people posting things like that, games being organized every Sunday morning, right?
Right. Sunday morning Swords.
It's a great community, and I think like it's one of those aspects of the game that, like once you get into Swords Without Master, you're also getting that too, right? Like you're getting this really, really tremendous like play community that goes with it. So, but for people who really want to like dive into it, but, awesome. Well, okay. So maybe just one more thing about Worlds Without Master. So, Swords Without Master is the big, like the game that most people, know from Worlds Without Master,
right.
the anthology. What is a game from the collection that maybe doesn't get as much attention as Swords, but that you'd like to kind of point out right now?
That is a tough question to answer.
we love Sophie's Choice style questions here on the Gauntlet. It's our favorite.
Because you're like, okay, so here's your eldest. Everyone loves your eldest.
Exactly.
What about your other 7 children?
Which of these don't you want to die?
Right, exactly. So there are a ton of other games out there. Some of them I think are okay or will do okay on their own. Like Wolfspell, I think is people like that, and I'm really super happy that you guys like Invisible Empire because
I love Invisible Empire.
Oh yeah, it's great.
I love it.
Yeah. I don't know if you've had a chance to try Sorcerer's Bloody Sorceress, but that fits in a similar kind of...
Yeah, I read it, yeah.
That one I was super happy at. So, like, from my own personal... Because not all these games are mine. So, from my own personal collection of these games, I think Sorcerer's Bloody Sorceress might be the one that I would point out and say, check that one out. That one, you play people who are attending a dinner, and it depends on how you roll in the beginning. This is a game that is descended from Swords Without Master, so it's got, like, some things that... much like Invisible Empire does, some things that Swords Without Master does. You start playing out these characters who all have a reason to be at this dinner and also all have a reason for wanting to kill the host of the dinner.
Nice.
Who is the Kingling, the young Kingling who shouldn't be in power. Oh, he may not be the host though, actually. Sometimes it's his rival that's the host, and very, very occasionally it is the skeletal remains of the sorceress, but that's neither here nor there. And so you play that out, and then at some point, the Kingling is going to die, and is going to be poisoned, and you are going to try and figure out this murder mystery about who did it. And the answer of who did it is going to be on the dice. You roll these 2 dice, and you put them under a cup, and nobody's going to know except for the sorceress. and she's just going to mete out justice how she wishes. And she may be guilty, which is one of my favorite parts of the game, is that she might be like, I think you're guilty, and know that she's guilty. And then the game ends with a bunch of people making accusations and then answering these questions about who might have the best opportunity to kill him, who might have access to the poison, who has the best reason to kill him, who's least likely to kill him, and then you arrange those questions in a certain order, and you reveal the dice, you subtract the lower from the higher, and that reveals the answer to which one of those questions is the guilty party.
Oh, cool. That's cool.
They have to grab the dice before anyone else does. If they don't, then they get caught, and they're killed. If they do, then they get away scot-free. If somebody grabs them while they're doing it, there's like every contingency in there, including if you grab it and you weren't guilty, like you did the math wrong and you grabbed the dice, then you're executed and they get away scot-free because you obviously decided you were guilty.
Nice.
And if it turns out that the dice are equal, if they're both the same number giving us a value of 0, that's when the sorceress is guilty. And it's whoever grabs the dice is the person who attacks the sorceress so everyone else can get away. And if nobody does that, the sorceress kills everyone because she is badass.
I love these, the names of these games, Sorceress, Bloody Sorceress, right. And the Dread Gesh of Duke Volku. I mean, these are great names, right? So swords and sorcery. It's good.
Of the ones that I didn't do, and this is putting me on a spot here because these are all great designers.
I will be sure to link the names of the other designers to these games you didn't mention.
I will. Let me just list the ones I didn't do, just so they each get mentioned, if that's all right. Like, there's Enter the Avenger, which is a great game about meting out vengeance when you don't know if you're going to be actually meting vengeance upon the guilty party.
The Gauntlet has played it. I have not, but the Gauntlet has. So,
excellent. Yeah. I should be looking at a list here. Oh, there's Scoundrel in the Deep, which is played with matches. And
that's on the top of my list of games to play.
Right. Yeah.
We play in businesses a lot of times that frown on throwing matches back and forth. So
I knew when this was when they pitched that to me that was going to be like even like in the back of my head I keep thinking about a Worlds Without Master convention like mini-con or something, and immediately I have to start thinking about where we can play Scoundrel in the Deep, you know?
Right.
Like, neither one of those, I think those both will have plenty of, you just tell them it's a game played with matches and people will want to play.
Sure, yeah.
Mask of the Mummy Kings, Nathan D. Paoletta, that one is great. I think that one's going to be A-okay on it, without me helping it out after this, because I think he's got it well in hand. He's going to be moving on and doing other things with it. So the one I think I want to let people know about is No Longer With Us, which is this amazing concept for a game where you play out the funeral of a fellow adventurer who's died.
Oh shit, that's pretty good.
Right? And
wow, yeah.
And it's great. You all have agendas for the funeral. You all have, there's things going on in the funeral, like I don't have the list in front of me right now, but like some of the ones that stick out in my head is that like the body starts speaking truths. Like, so you have it's on the funeral pyre and it's just like,
wow,
starts saying things and like, who doesn't want those truths to come out? You know, that sort of stuff. Oh, it's so good. And
I love that because whenever I have like a long-term character in a say Dungeon World recently, or like Burning Wheel before when I was doing Burning Wheel, whenever I had one die, I always feel the need to like, no one asks for it, but I always feel the need to like, to have a moment like where we like honor them and remember them, you know, and like, and reflect on what they contributed, you know, and so, that's pretty cool. I kind of like the idea of like maybe slotting that game in there. That'd be pretty badass.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a thing that like a lot of these games really can just slide into your standard fantasy, you know, campaign. You have a character die, let's go play No Longer With Us. And that was one of the intents of the designers of the game, was to do that. And then somebody did a mini-con where they did alternating Swords Without Master games with I think they did Invisible Empire as one of them, and, you know, like, they were all from Worlds, but they, you know, influenced their own setting with these other games. And you guys had the brilliant Star Wars thing with Invisible.
Yeah. Whose idea was that? Was that mine or yours, Dan?
That was mine.
That was yours.
I'm not letting you steal it.
Yeah. Mine was the My Life with Master.
Star
Wars thing.
Yeah.
Well, we should tell people it was we were thinking you could play Invisible Empire with Jabba the Hutt, or it was Dan's idea, but which I think is pretty cool. So because Invisible Empire, you're normally like telling tales to this king who may or may not kill you, right?
Right.
So,
yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
It's there to build a world, right? And that's precisely what you could do there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Cool. Well, let's see. We're going to post all the appropriate links so that people can go check out Worlds Without Master.
Cool.
I can't stress enough to the listeners what a tremendous value Worlds Without Master is. It's you get so much pleasure in gaming for your buck. People should definitely go check it out if they haven't already. Let's have touch on a couple things maybe not related to Worlds Without Master.
Okay.
I am told there's a thing called Epimus. What is that exactly?
I'm surprised that you don't know what Epimus is.
I do not know what it is.
It is an age-old tradition from the dawn of time.
Well, I'm a clone. I was just manufactured less than a year ago. So, yeah.
So Epimus is a holiday that comes around every December 24th. By coincidence, happens to be my birthday. And on Epimus, traditionally, you're supposed to give the gift of game to your friends and loved ones.
Okay.
And then play games on that day. So in times past, as loyal fans of Epimus, we've a bunch of game publishers, we've gotten together and we've created a promotion where you would buy PDFs for your friends, and those PDFs would be delivered to them on Epimus Morn by Epiclaus.
Oh, cool. Okay, very good.
And you, for your efforts, for your troubles, would receive copies of those PDFs for free ahead of time, so you could read them and be ready to play them on Epimus, should the occasion arise. And we've done this for 6 years now, I think.
Okay, cool.
And, so every year it's always a little different. We have a different collection of games each time. We try and put them together in bundles, and the bundles themselves are pretty tremendous deals. And then we sell them. When you buy them, you get to tell us who you're buying them for. And then you will get to download the games right away. And like I said, on Epimus Morn, the people that you bought it for will get an email that will probably go to their spam folder, and you'll have to tell them to check their spam folder. But that will tell them that they have games waiting for them. Or in the case last year, we did it with coupons because the online platform that we had, that was just easier for us on our side. Epimus is a continual struggle to make it better every year and easier because, as it turns out, with my wife's birthday, my wedding anniversary, and all the other holidays in December, it gets a little tight, and I want to do as little work as possible. And my finals this year, which is great.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, whenever it rolls around for time for that, I'll be sure to reshare the link for Epimus. Cool. Well, so why don't we wrap up the interview portion?
Sure.
Is there anything you're working on right now that you want to give us a little peek at or tell us about?
Well, there's Lincoln Green. I could talk a little bit.
Lincoln Green. Let's talk about Lincoln Green. I don't know much about Lincoln Green, so this will be great to hear.
Okay. Well, Lincoln Green is a Robin Hood game. The title is derived from I was reading the Howard Pyle collection of Robin Hood, which is if you think of Robin Hood, probably what you're thinking of is Howard Pyle's Robin Hood. Or you're thinking of Disney's Robin Hood. And
what if you're thinking of Kevin Costner?
Okay.
Are you just wrong?
No, that's fine. I'm okay. I've come to terms with that one.
Okay.
You should probably be looking at the 80s British television one, Robin of Sherwood, which is amazing. If you're going to watch Robin on the screen, I would definitely avoid the most recent movie, which had, what's his name in it?
There's so many Robin Hood movies. I can't
think of We'll put it in robot voice later.
It was that memorable.
Robin Hood, starring Russell Crowe, 2010.
Yeah. Anyways, the game itself, I'm trying to kind of create this feel like the Howard Pyle one, but I actually want to organize it so that you can adopt and take on the structures of different... Robin Hood's been around for a long, long time, and there's been a lot of different takes on it. So I have these, what I call traditions in the game as I'm writing it, and that allows you to say, hey, we want to play something more like the sort of gritty, we're outlaws living in a forest version where life is not necessarily, you're not going to be able to, just get knocked out and captured or something like that.
Right, yeah.
And actually the Howard Pyle one, you don't just get knocked out and captured like that. That one, people can be seriously hurt, although people are thwacked upon the head with very thick sticks and just are just asleep for a while. So,
is it grim or zany?
Yeah, exactly. And I also have rules in it for anthropomorphic, because that definitely fits into a certain zone of the Robin Hood tradition, and
sure.
Rules for doing magic stuff, which fits the Robin of Sherwood kind of thing. The idea of the game is, we talked earlier about both Usagi Yojimbo and Tunnels and Trolls, and like both of those games, although they're not very similar at all, they've both had a great influence on what I'm doing with this Robin Hood game. And my goal with it is to kind of take what I love about those games and put it into a much simpler thing. And I shouldn't say that out loud because I will fail at that goal. But what comes from it will hopefully be enjoyable. Right now it uses a bunch of coins. You flip pennies basically, and you just get heads or tails to see if you've succeeded at things. The main way the game works is that you want to look at what I call points, and using points in the same way that you would use points when you talk about an argument, like you made a good point there, or here's my counterpoint. So the game is like, you want to sneak up on the castle, and I'm, as the GM can say, well, they have guards, they see you. And you're like, well, hold on. We know that I'm good at sneaking because of this thing that happened. And also, it's Twilight, and we're playing the anthropomorphic one, and my character is crepuscular. Nice.
Furiously Googling what that word
is. Those are animals that are awake during the twilight times.
Okay, very good.
It's actually a vital part of the anthropomorphic one, is that you have to decide if your character is nocturnal, diurnal, crepuscular, or the other one that I can't remember the name of, that just means you can be awake or asleep at any given moment.
Okay, well, yeah, so when you were describing that little example you just gave, I heard shades of Tunnels and Trolls, in fact, in there.
Right, yeah.
Like the little bit of like that negotiated problem-solving thing. So, yeah. Cool. Is there anything else you want to say about it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm working on it. It's definitely something that I've decided that my life is super busy, so every Wednesday I try to dedicate some time to working on this particular game, because I have to spend the rest of the time working on either the magazine or, as it turns out, accounting.
Right. That's cool. Well, it turns out I was wrong. I found one more question here at the bottom of the page. Let's go ahead and do that final question, shall we? Okay. Here's my pitch for a Swords Without Master, or possibly Wolfspell hack. Okay, here's how my hack of Swords Without Master goes. Hot, smooth-chested teenage werewolves spend their days going to class and taking showers together after gym. At night, they either hang out at the mall, or they sate their bloodlust on a hunt. In either case, they end up making love underneath the light of the moon. Question, what are my two dice called?
That's good. Okay, so, first of all, I should say that I think that this genre is amply serviced by Monster Hearts.
Oh, of course, yes. And it's the only way we play it. Everyone has to be a werewolf.
Right. And I have a deep, abiding love for that game. It's also a genre that I have trouble with personally, because my experience of high school has often been much more grotesque. So I thought about this, and I thought that definitely one of the dice would have to be acne. And I know that is not apropos to what you've offered.
Mine only really has one tone at the end of the day.
Right.
It's just a single die called Sexy as Hell.
Right, exactly. Well, so I thought maybe acne and musk would be the two.
Oh, that's pretty good.
That you would have.
Yeah, that's good.
And I think both tones would both work for like feral kind of things. Like I think acne would be like the ugly side of things where things bleed, or, you know, when a fight goes wrong and not necessarily you lose, but you end up doing, horrible things or whatever. And musk is where that monstrous side is sexy, right? Like that's the two there. But yeah, I guess the acne is where the monstrous side isn't sexy, and the musk is when it is, and that's the
I love
the
it.
big
That's
divide.
Good, yeah,
it's pretty good. I want to play that. Well, bonus question for everyone. Bonus question. Bonus follow-up question. I would like for all of us to give an example, or to do our eidolons for our characters in proposed Swords Without Master hack. Dan, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure, I'll start. So I'm going to send you guys a picture real quick over Hangouts.
We will post this picture in the show notes too. So.
Oh, that's great.
All right, hold on. I haven't seen it yet. Oh.
All right. So bear with me.
That's not sexy at all. I don't understand that.
No. Listen, I've got it.
Well, so you should just describe it for the listeners so we know what it is.
So we'll post it, but it is a Chinese crested hairless dog, and it is a participant in the 2015 World's Ugliest Dog Contest. Its name is Rascal. But when you look at this picture, like I want you to look at the picture while I'm describing this and just really let it sink in and like stare into this dog's eyes.
Yeah, I can't. It's so hard.
This is a dog that is like world weary, and like just look at his eyes. So I'm picturing like my character based off of this is he's playing the role of a teenager, but he's like the old one in boy bands who's way too old to actually be hanging out with any of the beautiful, smooth-chested teenage werewolves. You know, he goes out and he hunts with them and he makes love in the moonlight with them, but like his heart's not in it because he's done it so many times, you know, and he's seen all of this, and he knows that it's a dead-end street, and like he keeps trying to tell the other guys, like, maybe there's something we should do. Like, think about what your life's going to be after you're too old to have moonlit orgies. But and so then I think like he participates, but his heart's not really in it, and he just kind of wishes he was back home with like a glass of red wine and maybe doing some accounting homework.
Yeah. I mean, that dog is definitely above that bullshit. Like that.
Exactly.
He really
right?
That dog. He's just like,
is. That was good, Dan.
So
Man, I hate to have to follow that, but I will. I will follow my sword and follow that. I chose for my eidolon a picture that I don't even know if it exists yet. I'm sure it is I'm sure it's on DeviantArt somewhere. But mine is a picture of Zach Morris and AC Slater, the two principal male characters from the classic 90s TV show Saved by the Bell. They're dressed all in neon, and they're sharing a milkshake together at the Max. That's my eidolon. If you are a gay male listener of a certain age, like my age, or if you are a woman listener of a certain age, a heterosexual woman listener of a certain age, you will know why this is so sexy and why you want them to be feral werewolves making love in the moonlight. It will be so obvious. And also, when they transformed into werewolves, they would have frosted fur.
So, that's
nice.
Good. Yeah,
that's pretty good.
That is good.
Yeah. Good. All right, Epi. What is the eidolon for my proposed hack?
I'm going to share mine via this Google Hangout as well. There you go.
Right.
This is a album by the band Too Much Joy. It is their last album, which came out, I don't know, it's like in the 90s sometimes, called Finally. And for the viewers at home, there are two teenagers lying in bed with their clothes strewn all about the floor. One of them looking particularly happy with himself, and the other one looking a little disappointed with the situation.
I just pulled up the picture. I had to Google it because the link didn't work.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. But I pulled it up.
Yeah, sorry. Can you say the name of it again?
Too Much Joy. The album is called Finally.
Yeah, it's both this picture, but also the band's, like, the album itself just has this sort of disillusionment with teenage sex area there. Not every song, but like there's a few songs on there that are just like, there's like one that has like a chorus that's like, let's just be friends. We never ever kept that vow. And that just, to me, encapsulates that sort of like trying to navigate this terrible, terrible, horrible, torturous, landscape that is, smooth-chested werewolves. That,
you guys, it's a fantasy. That's what I'm trying to. None of us had a high school experience like this.
I know. I felt guilty going into it because, obviously, as a purveyor of a magazine that is entirely about fantasy, like I should be able to step into it. But there's always that bit that's going to be like, I'm still angry about that.
Awesome. Well, that was great.
Excellent.
Hey, Epi, this has been tremendous fun.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you very much. This is a lot of fun for me, too.
Cool. Hey, listeners, that's our podcast. If you would like to get in touch with us, the best way to do it is to join our Google Plus community. It's called The Gauntlet. Just go to the community section of Google Plus and search for The Gauntlet. You will find us there. We also have an online, a Google Plus community dedicated strictly to playing online games. And I want to go ahead and just kind of run through some of the games that are available for you to play right now if you go check it out. We have Lamentations of the Flame Princess. We have Jason Lutz's Funnel World. The Warren. We have some Fiasco. We've got, Kaleidoscope. Jackson Tegu's Kaleidoscope is on there. We've got The Final Girl. We've got lots and lots of Dungeon World, so much Dungeon World, and Monster Hearts. So if you are interested in any of those games, you should come join our community. It's super active, and we are playing games and talking about games, and you're going to love it. But that's the show. Epi, thanks again so much.
Thank you.
Dan, thank you so much.
Yep.
And listeners, thanks for listening.